Welcome to Win with Richardson and Richardson. What's important now? Success in business most often comes down to hard work, not by silver bullets and quick fixes. It's knowing where to focus that hard work that's key to winning. Join sales prospecting expert and 3-time seven-figure business founder Carrie Richardson and managing partner of R&R Consulting and former owner of Doberman Technologies, Ian Richardson, for radical honesty regarding strategic planning, accountability, and execution that will get you the systematic results you're working toward. Let's get into today's episode. Thought leader and your host, Carrie Richardson.
Tell me about your startup and what were you doing before? So you applied for jobs at investment banks. After that, then what happened?
I'm originally from Mexico City, born and raised there, went to undergrad there, studied economics. After graduation, I did not land a job on that firm, but I entered another investment banking boutique that was half Dutch, half Mexican. Worked there for about a year and a half. Incredibly interesting. It definitely built my work ethic a lot. I learned a lot about financial modeling, finance, deal making, all of that, but at the analyst level. So you're basically moving logos on PowerPoints and building spreadsheets. The great thing about this shop was that it was a small team. We were only 7, and it was very highly dependent on the owner or the managing director of the office. So he did provide us with a ton of access to the other side of the table, to the clients. Maybe because of necessity, the hierarchy was not as well established as other places, but also I consider him one of my biggest mentors until his passing. He was also concerned with developing the talent. So I quickly rose to senior analyst. I was in charge of my other 3 fellow analysts. Basically, I received the orders directly from the boss and then distribute the work, compile it. And it was a role getting ready for what it's called an associate on the banking space. And at a certain point, while I was making that transition, my 2 associates that were teaching me everything that I should know for the next level went to business school. So there was a big void left there of leadership and junior leadership and growth that my boss was not going to sit down with me and help me. He wanted to see them. So at that point, I thought that, okay, I've gained a lot of experience here. It's maybe time to see what's out there. And I landed a job here in the US 10 years ago in Miami for McKinsey, the consulting firm. So I came 10 years ago on a work visa to work for McKinsey, and they were focused on covering financial institutions, banks, and insurance companies mainly. So again, this was completely different job, but the credentials helped me get there. And I learned to see operations in this part of my career, advising banks on what to do, what not to do, and especially on technology. Since the Miami office was very focused on the Latin American market. At that point, this was 2014, smart ATMs, your banking app, we had smartphones back then, but my dad still used in Mexico the thing with the passcodes to make transactions. He didn't use his phone. He could use online, but there was no ATMs that would take cash. They would only give cash or take checks. So it was a good thing to have all that knowledge from all over the world and bring best practice to Latin America. But one of the bad things about that job was that it had a lot of traveling. Especially I was covering Ecuador and Peru. So I would fly every Sunday or Monday for 1.5 years to Peru or Ecuador, come back on a Thursday. And different to my dad is also a consultant. So in my house, consultancy was like astronaut. Everyone in my house wanted to be a consultant. My sister is still a consultant. My dad's still a consultant in his private practice now. So I wanted to try it and see what all the fuss was about. The difference is that when my dad or my sister earlier for their careers were traveling, they would always come back home, family, friends, and I was in a new city, not too much friends. My personal life was not what I wanted, but I have started to build a network in Miami, and I got a job at Morgan Stanley, wealth management with, as I mentioned, I'm Mexican, but I landed with the Argentina, Peru, and English-speaking Caribbean team. $1 billion in assets under management. And I was the analyst of the team in charge of everything trading, reporting, presentations, client management. Very fun. It was super fast paced, market hours, especially the trading portion was super fun. Made a couple of mistakes in my career. From the moment I left investment banking, tried consulting, I wanted to do investment banking again. And I wanted to do it at the highest level. And that means, New York, big firm, big deals. I wanted to experience that. And as an international, even in a big firm, internal mobility is very difficult. So my path to do that was through an MBA. So I started planning and doing all the things necessary to be accepted to a top business school. And one of those things that I started doing takes me back when I was in high school, and more than high school, when I was in college and I was about to graduate. I went back to my high school and pitched a class that was vocational orientation, but more from the perspective of recent graduates from college. So when we had that type of class in high school, they will tell you more about, area one is medicine in the broader sense. Area two is socioeconomics. Area three is arts. Area four is engineering. But at no point we had like recent graduates, or even if they're not recent, like professionals come to these class and tell us, okay, I studied economics and I do this for the Central Bank of Mexico. I studied engineering and I am a software development engineer, or I am building bridges, or I am helping an architectural firm. Nothing like that. So I went back to my school to pitch, giving a class with my high school had around 150 graduates every class. Like, let me bring all these people to tell kids that are only 4 or 5 years younger than us what we studied and what we're starting to work in. And we did that for a full semester. It was a ton of fun. And I started loving teaching. And this was not like proper teaching, but you were sharing knowledge. So when I was here in Miami with Morgan Stanley, I started doing 2 programs. One was Student Finance League, which was to give financial literacy courses to disenfranchised communities. Mm-hmm. So we will go to the homeless shelter, we will go to the public high schools, Miami Special Olympics, some corporates where they had minimum paid jobs like fast food and retail. And we had a program. This was without smartphones, computer technology. It was a workbook that we had printed out. And you give classes on what's interest rate, time value of money, budgeting, and need versus a want. All of that in very easy to understand terms. I started loving that, did that for 2 years. And then I got offered to do Kapow, which is Kids and the Power of Work, which I would go to elementary school and be with 8th and 9th graders and tell them life lessons. We would talk about, for example, discrimination. How do you teach discrimination to 8-year-old kids while also being responsible with their stage? So we would do this trivia game in which I would say gold team, red team, blue team, start asking them about their favorite cartoons, the movies that were, the Avengers, Harry Potter, all of that. But when they had to ring the bell, I would always choose gold group. Sometimes blue, never red. And after the session, I will ask them like, hey, how do you feel that even though you hit the bottom first, I never, went to red. Oh no, that's terrible. We were deserving and all of that. So you would teach them life lessons in very digestible forms. And then at the end of it all, we'll play trivia as it was intended, declare a winner and all of that. Then other fun stuff like we organized a day at work with Morgan Stanley, which all the kids came to the office. We put them next to advisors, traders, and help them build a portfolio. And then that we were going to track the portfolio that they would choose. And it was very fun because advisors would sit down with these kids and tell them, like, what do you love? Video games. So he'll go in, what video game companies trade? Oh, Ubisoft, right? Let's grab Ubisoft. I love fast food. I love clothing. I love Disney. And we built the pitch competition, and the kid that won killed it. So that week he killed it. And then it all ended up with a party with the kids a week after. But I'm telling you this because at the beginning, I did have this urge for teaching, but I started when I did Student Finance League and Capao. I started more from the selfish side. I knew that to get into a good business school, all these extra work activities look very good. And I ended up falling in love with, especially with the financial literacy side of things. So went to business school, then studied my MBA at NYU, focused on finance, technology, and banking.
That
And
school's okay.
I have my degree here above my computer. Like, I'm in my house, like I'm a lawyer or something. And, my girlfriend asked me, like, what's going on with that degree? And I tell her, that's the most expensive possession I own. So this is like, $150,000 painting.
I'd have that made into wallpaper.
So I'm going to display it. But I continue with the teaching side at NYU. I was a teaching assistant for microeconomics for 3 semesters, teaching my fellow graduate students that were in semesters under me and also the undergrads. So that was fantastic. And then I finally achieved my goal of going to investment banking. And for what I've told you, I've always worked in financial institutions or for financial institutions. So the team that I landed on investment banking was a FIG team, which is Financial Institutions Group, where you cover smaller banks, insurance companies, asset managers, fintech, and specialty finance. And inside there, I specialized in bank M&A, specialty finance, and fintech a little bit. So I was doing some of the biggest deals that happened the years that I was there. I was involved as an associate, great experience. But what happened to me at that point in my life is COVID hit. And it hit while I was in New York. And New York was one of the places that COVID was felt the hardest. I worked from home for a very long portion of 2020. Everything was closed. And then the winter times come and the weather starts getting freezing. It gets dark at 4:30 p.m. I've been working 17 hours, 6 days a week. So life started getting complicated for me on the personal side. And out of nowhere, I received a LinkedIn message from a NYU alumni that said, I'm building something. Every time I put the keywords for a search, you are the first hit, the first result. And I have done this 3 times. We need to talk. So, I went in, talked him a little bit, see who he was. Texas businessman, oil and gas investor, owner of a soccer team in Austin, a place in MLS. And I'm very much into sports, and I know how difficult it is to get a franchise in the US. There's this series called Billions that I don't know if you have seen it, but the main character, Bobby Axelrod, tries to buy an NFL team and they don't let him. And the guy that doesn't let him tells him, we don't have nobility titles in the US, but owning sports franchises is our version of being a knight. And it's like, you've made it, right? Also, I remember cases where like the former owner of the Clippers of basketball in LA was forced to sell his team to Steve Ballmer because he said racist things to his ex-girlfriend. That's how tightly controlled that network is. So that was enough diligence for me. Took the meeting, spoke for about an hour. He told me, we need to meet in Dallas. I was in the middle of a live deal, so I only had Saturdays off. So I flew a Saturday morning, met with him all day, flew at night, back to work on Sunday. And he offered me a job at his family office. And, we did a bunch of deals from buying real estate, alternative energy, a lithium company, a ton of oil and gas, and also fintech. And inside those fintech projects, we were seeing the opportunity that exists for financial services for Latinos. There's a very long tail of underserved, underbanked communities in the US. Is more than 20% of the population right now, but 40% of them are underserved or underbanked. And yeah, right now I live in Miami, and if you have ever been here, you go through Brickell Avenue and you see every bank existed to men from the US, East Coast, Northeast, West Coast to Latin American banks. to European banks. All of them are here. But you go 10 minutes away to Hialeah, and all those beautiful branches start becoming cashier's check store, payday loan, pay advance, all of that. And people there are paying 300 to 400% of yearly interest, and they don't feel it because they got $1,000 loan that they needed, and they're paying I don't know $60 a week because that's manageable. But if you add up those $60 a week for 52 weeks, they're paying 200, 300%. So there's a misprice there in between why Bank of America, Chase cannot give you an entry level credit card when you're paying a 300% loan. It might be for a variety of reasons. Community shame of not paying the local shop, fear, you don't know if it's a loan shark and old school mafia, they're gonna come bust your knee, or simply because you do it. And the question here is, how do we bridge that gap from 300% APR to 26%? So we started talking about this at the family office, and that's where I met Diego and Alfredo, my co-founders. They run a venture studio that has been running for around 8 years now, and a demand generation and marketing agency. We wanted to build a customer acquisition strategy for the Latino market for financial services. So we contacted them. They came back with a plan. And in building this relationship with them, we decided that we can run with this project and we can make something special happen. So with the help of our friends and family in Dallas and elsewhere, we raised a friends and family round and launched to do this full time on January of 2023. So we have been building for the last year and a half the relationships that we need with financial institutions, the technology that we need, hiring, doing more fundraising to get to the point where the company is attractive for investors and that we can launch to market. And we're very happy to say that by September of 2024, we'll be launching our product, which is a financial services marketplace focused on closing the wealth gap between Latinos and general population. And we plan on doing this by doing strategic partnerships with balance sheet providers, banks, insurance companies, asset managers, broker dealers, payments companies that really want this demographic and offer white label products that are attached to both the bank, but that the brand that they interact is IM Financial. And our customer acquisition plan is all built towards this demographic. We're going to speak to them how they like to be speak, how they want to be taught about financial literacy. There's a big component of financial literacy also in our customer acquisition plan and our product plan. For example, we plan on having a credit card in which you need to pass videos explaining APR, payments, your payment date, all of those things that become familiar once you are in the system, but that they are very new to people that have never been banked. They've never heard about interest. They thought that, you use a credit card and then the bank paid. And they didn't understand that you owe that money. But I'm paying the minimum. Yeah, if you pay the minimum for, a $300 pair of Jordans, you're going to end up paying $700. That doesn't make sense. We plan on doing videos that once you have those videos and we have your data on FICO scores and all of that, we unlock the credit product for you. Show me that you can be responsible. And that way, the smaller banks that we're working with, they can take that into account for their underwriting. Because if you can walk to one of the big banks right now with your social security number and walk out with a credit card, you're not my client because you're ready. They can offer you better rates, cashback, better products. I can offer you a secure credit card, but that secure credit card is planned to graduate you to an American Express Black in 20 years.
American Express Black is a pretty expensive card to hold.
Yeah, I had a lot of good things happen to me in my life to get me to where I am. But one thing that I did is I moved to the US with a job offer and $1,500 that I use for security deposits for my apartment. And I started from zero.
Mm-hmm.
And the good job part helps because I was paying with cash everything that I was doing while I was building my credit score. But I did have to pay 3 security deposits for my first apartment, a huge down payment for my first lease. I went to AT&T and T and they wanted $300 of security deposit for my router. When you enter the financial services industry and you have no credit score, you are way behind. And what you can achieve is, I of course didn't have $150,000 to pay for my MBA, plus 2 years of opportunity cost of not making money because it was a full-time program, plus 2 years of cost of living in New York while making $0. I did that with a student loan, and I repaid my student loan 2 years after. So it can be done, and we want to teach that path to people that don't know that this can be achieved.
Yeah, as a non-American citizen, I can relate to that. I moved here to start a business. I had a business in Canada. When I came to the US, they didn't consider that I had credit in Canada or that I owned property in Canada. That they didn't care about anything other than revolving credit, and I had none. So I got a $500 prepaid card from the Bank of America. And when I sold my business, I still had not received any lending from them. They would not lend to me.
No,
So I
no,
ran my whole business on cash for 10 years because I wasn't American.
I've been through that same way. I started with a $300 Capital One Quicksilver card that I have to this day. I don't use it as much, but I still have it.
No, if you close your first
Yeah.
credit card, then it impacts your FICO score, which you have to
Correct.
learn. It's not the same in Canada.
You need to learn. And here, I have one of my subscriptions. I don't know if it's Netflix or Spotify or Dollar Shave Club, but $12 a month charging to that card so it doesn't get not operational, and then I pay it and I keep that credit. But yeah, it's tough. And one of our huge business thesis is that no credit is not the same as bad credit. And big banks, they cannot bend their underwriting models because there's so much access, so much inflow, that if they say, okay, I'm going to start giving credit cards with people with 580 FICO, all the scammers would flood in, get the card, make the payments, and then just never pay back. But the Latino community is very cash based. I grew up with my dad. Whenever he bought a car, is when he had the full amount to buy the car. Whenever he bought a TV, it was when he had the full amount to buy a TV. If your uncle lends you money, you you won't eat until you don't pay him back. We believe that the Hispanic community in the US is ruled by the same values of family commitment, being responsible with money. They just need the access. And another thing that also affects a lot is that a lot of the origins of these Hispanic Americans comes from illegal immigration. So when mom and dad came maybe 30, 40 years ago to the US, they didn't want to go to the bank because being at the bank implied that someone knew their address. And they didn't know if this was communicated to immigration services, or so they lived under the water for their whole lives. And now their kids are born, they're American, they have social security numbers, they have transitioned from very hard labor intensive works to more managerial roles. And this third generation is going to community college or to university and getting even better jobs in tech, healthcare, and others. But if you learn in your house that the bank is bad, don't trust the bank, you don't need the bank, cash, 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 then you're, in the easiest of examples, you're losing 1.5% yearly on cashback. And this is not taking into account interest rates, or you want to buy a house and the down payment that you need to put in, it's way higher, or your interest rate. It's like if you only cash transact, you're a millennial, Gen Z, you don't see home ownership as anywhere near your future. You're paying 2% more for everything that you buy.
I was speaking to Dave Madera, which is how we ended up interacting, and he was talking about how the client base for his multifamily residential properties, they didn't trust banks, and that became a problem for them when it was time to rent an apartment. They had no credit rating, they had no history with a bank, and that's one of the problems that he was trying to solve, is like, how do we create a credit product that will be trusted by a community that has habitually turned their backs on the banking community. What I noticed when I was in Mexico was that they seem to do a lot of like what we would call layaway in the US, where you go into the store and you pay a little bit every month. Say, like for back to school clothes for the kids, you start paying for those clothes 6 months before. And then by the time it's time to go back to school, all their uniforms are paid for, but they go in and they put a hold on the merchandise and they pay for it in advance until it's time to take it home. Versus us in America, where we go in and we take it and then we pay 28% for the privilege of having it today. We're not patient. We aren't the same. It's a different mindset completely.
Yeah, and also like hybrid models have started to jump in from that, the buy now, pay later.
Big
But,
fan.
but even without a credit card, you want to buy clothing or you want to buy an air flight or anything, and there's always the option of, hey, pay $600 now or pay $70 for 6 months, for 12 months. They end up making their interest in those easy to accommodate payments. But at the end, I wouldn't say it's predatory, but it is a necessity that is being solved for people that really want to do things or own things. But then I think that the root cause of that comes to education. It's the financial budgeting. What's a need versus a want, right? If you really need those school clothes, that's a need. And if your only way to acquire them is paying them 6 months in advance in small fractional parts, awesome. If it's again, the newest Air Jordan shoe or, designer bag, that's probably outside of your budget and you shouldn't be buying
That's it. I think that's the most important lesson any of us are going to learn today.
it. Correct. And it all starts with, how much money I'm making this month, how much money I'm spending, what is it, how much is it? Do you want to save it? You want to buy stuff? You want to save for retirement? And again, like, it's so valid. You can have the goal of, Disneyland or Europe vacation and you're saving for that. That's amazing. Do that. But do it when you're ready. Why pay all that interest in the buy now, pay later? If you can save for it 6 months, plan for it, and then when you do it, it feels natural. It feels, you feel relieved. You're not waking up and having emails reminding you that your payment is due. And I think that it also creates a stress-free environment where people can function better in their daily lives, relationships, work, kids. Banks bombard us with offers when you're in the good side of their books, or with reminders when you're in the bad side of your books. It, Trying to avoid the second one, I think it's very important for a stress-free life.
I had an investment advisor from Bank of America call me recently asking me if I'd like to have a conversation with them. And I'm like, where were these calls when I started a business and you guys wouldn't give me a credit card and you wouldn't give me a line of credit and you wouldn't support me in any way, but you'd like my money now?
Yeah.
No, you don't get a second chance. I deal with the credit union now. The credit union supported my business.
Correct. And you're mentioning something very important of what we're trying to do in IM Financial. We want to be your first yes. And that builds a loyalty that goes beyond benefits. When you help someone when they truly need it, they remember it. And I think that being that first yes as a business idea, it's very innovative because people want to reach out to you when you have the $100,000. They want to reach out to you when they can make money off of you, but they don't want to take the risk when you're starting. And I think it's very important for the economy to give yeses to the people that everyone says no to.
My husband would tell the story of how when he started an IT business, he was very young, and there was a piece of software that he wanted to buy. They call it a PSA. The investment in the software was something like $20,000, which he didn't have that liquid to spend at the time. He went to the credit union. The credit union lent to him for that. And he became one of the largest clients of that credit union over the next 10 years. Now he serves as part of their audit committee. He's giving back to the bank that supported his business originally.
One of my biggest takeaways is that I went to high school here in Miami. After I gave the needs versus wants story, a senior came and he introduced himself. He's from Peruvian descent. He said like, hey, I love what you're doing. I love that you work at Morgan Stanley. I'm going to go start a community college here in Miami, but my plan is to transfer to once I get great grades. Can I keep in touch with you? His second year when he transitioned from community college to University of Miami on a scholarship, we gave him a summer internship at Morgan Stanley at my team. He transferred to Cornell, so big rising star. We gave him a recommendation to do the investment banking senior summer internship at Morgan Stanley. And then he graduated and he lives in New York now, and does amazing. His goal of, getting from public school in inner city Miami to being an investment banker, that's not an easy path to do. I like to believe that what we did with him, first with the financial literacy and then with the opportunities, opened the doors that he needed to be who he was meant to be. And, technology allows us now to do that on a bigger scale, on a grander scale. And maybe it's not these direct referrals to jobs and opportunities, but it's the credit, the lines of credits that you need to start your business, to go to college, to buy your first house, to invest. And, that's truly the goal of what we're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us today. I appreciate you.
You've been listening to Win with Richardson and Richardson. What's important now? We're so glad you've joined us and know you're one step closer to winning big in your business too. We'd love to connect with you outside of the show. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to connect@rnr.consulting. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll easily know when new episodes are available. Until next time, you can win, and we're here to help.